Welcome to Laugh, Cry, or Die, a comedy disability podcast hosted by two people who are funny and have disabilities. Weird.
Apparently.
My name's Steve Wilbury, and with me, as always, is my co-host Naomi Strain.
Hello.
Hello. This week, I think we're just gonna have a good old moan because we've kind of been through the ringer a bit the last hot minute.
Yeah, the last week
Yeah.
has been awful.
And we know awful. Like we know from it. This isn't like oh, can you believe what Jenny said?
Yeah.
Um,
I spilled my coffee.
my feelings are so hurt.
Yeah, I think a lot of the
Your day.
time it'll be either you or me that's had a bad week. But today we have the perfect storm
We have
where we're
double,
both
double,
feeling like shit.
double bad week.
So
Although
tell
mine
me
was
about your bad week.
my bad week was actually relatively exciting.
Ooh.
Because sorry, that's a tick. So I traveled down to Christchurch with the kids I coach in fencing and took
Mm,
them to the regional secondary schools competition where they did
nice.
very well. I managed to get myself roped into a show on Friday night though, and I was doing my contact juggling routine, which turns out that because I'm now old and I don't train as much, if I hold four acrylics in my left hand for a long time, then my left shoulder freaks the fuck out.
Right.
And I'm really good about like warming up my hands and my elbows and my wrists, but I don't tend to do my shoulders as well as I should, obviously.
Is this the side that a while ago, like quite a long time ago, you buggered by juggling with a bowling ball?
The scar from that cut is on the same side. So I think they're kind of tied together a little bit.
You are ticking bad today, aren't you?
Well, yeah, I am. I'm quite
Mm,
flinchy today.
mm.
Um, so yeah, and then my left shoulder has just seized up, which then has this kind of knock-on effect. Then my neck seizes up, but then because my pain is firing so much from something that's actually painful, then my central sensitization gets wound up, and it's just kind of like this snowball down a hill effect.
Right, right.
And it's not helped by the fact that I really ran myself pretty close to the bone. I was doing all day at a fencing tournament, and then I was on a bus for an hour and a half, and then I was with people and talking and being social, and then I
Are
was.
you are you aware when you're overdoing it like that? Are you aware that you're going to pay the price, or are you kind of caught up with the adrenaline of what you're doing?
Um, it. I was curious to see how hard I'd get hit. I'm not as
Right,
bad as I would have been several years ago if I'd done the same thing.
right.
Um, I'm definitely like, paying it, but like even in pain camp, they talk about the idea of a planned boom and bust. So sometimes you just gotta do the thing, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I maybe could have been smarter and taken more breaks in a quiet room at the fencing tournament or something. Or there's some other stuff that if I was like really on it, I could have mitigated a little bit. But yeah, I lived like a normal person for like 3 days, and fuck, it hurts.
It's a nice little break of trying to pretend you're normal, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
not maintainable.
everything's great, and then fuck, I had a meeting for like 2 hours in this really fucking loud ass pub
Mm,
that I should have said, "Hey, can we go outside?" But I was just like in being normal mode, and
yeah. So you've had complete sensory overload.
oh fuck. And then
Mm.
also in the fencing tournaments, the buzzers for the when you like get a touch are this really high piercing, because if you're in a huge gym and there's like 50 strips going, you need to be able to hear it. But we were in a small gym, and it just and that's the whole central upwind thing, is any
Yeah, yeah.
sensory input. If it's a movie, or it's like anything that's just loud, it just winds up. And then because I'd already rolled the ball down the hill by doing the show.
Yeah. And then you've
Yeah.
got a bunch of overexcited kids to manage as well.
Yeah, and then I'm also like doing physical stuff and trying to get them warmed up and watching and analyzing their opponents and trying to give them advice and really like, doing people shit.
Yeah, yeah. So what was it like pretending to be normal? You were like a normal person out there in the world.
It was,
Did you have moments where you were just like, look at me being a human?
you know what I did? I should have stopped to take it in more. I think that's part of my problem. I should have been like,
Right. Yeah, because you're not going to be able to do that again for a while.
no, that was, and then national fencing tournament for my kids is in 2 weeks, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll go to nationals, and I'm like, no, I'm not
Mm,
going to nationals.
mm-mm. Yeah,
I've got,
can you get away with not going to that?
um, yeah, I don't get
Mm.
paid for one.
Yeah.
For two, I know other coaches who are actually better than me, who will kind of take them under their wing while they're there.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
for example, they in the one of the competitions, I ran out to get some lunch, and one of my kids was fencing, and this woman who's a Olympic level coach, like literally her husband was an Olympic finalist and she was his coach,
Wow, wow.
was like, "Oh, Steve's not here. I'll coach Grace," and Grace did way better with her.
Okay.
So it's fine. I wanted to go to just kind of be like, here are my kids,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
me to say hello, to the New Zealand fencing scene, as it were.
Is it like on Karate Kid? That's all I picture when you say you're off doing this stuff. Like a
Yes,
big tournament like that.
it's not. It's actually it was regional secondary schools, so it wasn't that big. I mean, like one of the events, there was two of the events. There was only 5 competitors in, and then like the biggest ones were like 15 people all in. So it
That's really
wasn't not
cool.
huge. But still, all of my kids got at least 2 medals. One of them got like 5. And yeah, they fought really well against the local regional guys. And I had some comments on the good look of my fencers. And one of my fencers got scouted because she was moving down to go to university. And the university club was like, hey, you should come
Oh,
fence with us.
fantastic.
So it was all very like, I'm good at making these kids awesome. So
Yeah,
yeah, that was nice.
yeah.
It was a nice feeling, especially like seeing. I've got a couple nice pictures with them with like all their medals on.
Yeah, that's really nice.
So
And
it's
now
cool.
you
So
can
you,
just pay
I
the
mean, that's
price.
what you have to balance the price of that is like, I've had 2.5 days of doing everything that I love doing. I did a show, I taught my kids, I got burgers, and I went and I didn't really stop for myself. I just did stuff through the day.
Yeah, yeah.
And I got all this great stuff and it was awesome. I mean, I even stayed up late juggling with a friend, with one of the guys I was staying.
Nice, nice. And
But
now
yeah,
you're going to be
um,
screwed for a
now
while.
I'm going to be screwed for like the rest of this week. I've got an
Yeah.
acupressure massage tomorrow, which I'm hoping will help release the shoulder, which then I can. But when the shoulder's constantly spasming and you've got like a legitimate um, sensory overload, for want of a better word, that results in a
Mm,
pain response,
yeah.
it's much harder if you've got something less like actively wrong. Whereas if it's just the upwind feeding itself, that's a lot easier to fix with like routine and stuff. But
Right, yeah, yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that's me. What about you? How's your
Okay. So,
Whoa.
so
You needed to have done that. You needed to have put your wrist to your head and fallen back on like a divan, like a
uh,
17th century madame.
but yeah, just laying back on the sofa with a lot of misery. Yeah. So in the last 5 days, I've had 3 seizures,
That's far
which
too many.
it's far too many, especially when for me a seizure isn't like for most people who have seizures. I think I'd be safe in saying that like a 5 minute seizure is, I don't know, sort of standard,
No,
and
no, no,
it's
no, no, no.
no, no. And I mean, for people that
Five
have
minutes is when we
seizures,
call the ambulance, right?
yeah, yeah,
But
okay,
as a
but
first
I'm sort
aider,
of
that's like 5 minutes is like that's a really fucking long seizure. This person needs medical attention.
okay, okay. So a 5 minute seizure is bad.
Yeah.
So mine, let's say roughly half an hour.
No, bad. Stop it.
That's me. That's how I do it. That's how I
You
roll. That's why I
love
shake,
it.
rattle, and roll.
You
Uh,
know?
I'm going to use that one more.
You know, I'm really, you know what you should do is a cover of the twist. Or no,
That'll
you
be
know,
a
oh
great
no, I
music
got it right.
video.
Okay, so you remake the twist, but it's do the spaz, and it's just you like doing seizure, and we just and then for the video we film you having seizures, and then you're singing, you're like do the spaz, and then it cuts to you literally having a
Doing
seizure,
the spaz.
and then
Yeah.
we make fun of you by doing the spaz dance.
Yes. Well, see, I've often thought of turning my seizures into what I term seizure size because they're really, really good for fitness.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, your heart rate gets up to one, so is because yours are quite still, aren't they? You just kind of like clench
Yeah.
almost. So,
I like to say they're ladylike. I'm quite contained. Like I don't do the not often. I don't do the big arching back, sort of flailing.
hopping about like a fish kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I don't bounce around. Mine are more sort of inwards and tensing as opposed
So
to
you're basically having a wank.
yeah. Yep, maybe
Tensing.
that's just it. I just keep on getting caught playing with myself and I go, oh, quick, let's just say it's seizure. But that's how violently I masturbate. It's like
It would
she is having a seizure.
it would explain the high heart rate. You
It
know,
would.
it ticks a lot of boxes. Wanky
Yeah.
McWank face.
Oh God, see now, yeah. No, yeah, no.
What if? Okay, what if?
Okay,
Right. Okay. So,
so
well, no. I have a brilliant idea, and then I'll let you tell your story.
okay.
Okay. So you get one of those like naughty vibrators that you can set off with a phone,
Oh
you know?
yes, yeah.
Yeah. Tie that to your seizure alarm. So when you have a seizure, you're also having a wank. And then the endorphins from having a wank will help you relax.
Well, see, that makes sense.
I'm a fucking medical genius.
I feel tempted to try and rig that up. That's a marketable idea. If
There
it
you go.
works, it's better than the drugs. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll let you
Oh, I
finish.
say when you were saying about how your heart rate gets up, my Fitbit records my heart rate, and it's quite cool looking sort of after I've had a seizure, looking at what it's jumped up to, and I think the highest I've seen it so far is 220.
There you go.
And it's
It's like,
yeah, and it goes from like normal, just ticking along, I don't know, at 60 BPM, and then it spikes like pretty much instantly straight up to 200 is fairly sort of average for what it jumps up to. And then when the seizure stops and it plummets right back down again. So I can see either when the seizure stopped or when I've been given drugs. So yeah, it's quite sort of intense to see.
it's
That's a
really
huge jump.
it's a really fascinating to me that your body can just go from resting to that in a wonder.
Yeah.
Like what must be going on like a physiological level, like with
Yeah,
your
yeah.
nerves
Well,
and
it's
shit.
like every single muscle in your body is all of a sudden having a workout.
Yeah, and then your brain's like, well, I need everything needs oxygen right now.
Yeah. And it's like if I go on, say, a treadmill and go really hard out, I can't get up that high.
No,
Like I've
like
managed to get up to 140 through exercise,
yeah, like
and that's
there's
made me want to die.
yeah, like that's like that's your heart exploding.
Pretty much.
That's like
Yeah.
five-ish, no, five, like four-ish times a second, maybe.
Maths.
It's it's basically a hummingbird, is what you are. You're just
Yeah,
like,
true. Yeah. Like if you went into hospital with your heart rate like that, they'd go, okay, can everyone stop and help this person who's
yeah, it would be.
hello?
That's like a fucking code blue bullshit. That's like
Yeah.
this. Yeah, there. This person's. And the other thing, although because you're fit and you have so much cardio exercise already, like that much speed, like just fuck. Yeah. Because do you know about the nervous system that's around your heart?
No.
So there's a nervous system that's around your heart whose name I forget, but it's so complex that there are anecdotal examples of people who've had like heart transplants. And then
Mm.
when they get their heart transplanted, their interests change.
What?
Or they've learned how to play the piano. I swear to God, I saw a thing on it, so it must be true. it's interesting to me about like, because it's so high, is your seizure just in your brain, or are there other parts like your enteric nervous system around your intestines? Like there's other like significant neural nodes within our bodies. I'm just looking
That's
up the nervous system.
yeah, I was going to say that's something I want to have a Google.
So yeah,
Oh,
it's the intrinsic cardiac nervous system. So CANS, or the cardiac autonomic nervous system.
because I think, like, the brain transplant, yeah, fair enough. You then become, I know, you become that person. I don't know.
Nature
I'm a
versus nature,
medical
big
person.
question. So
I'm
we'll
so
go dig
medically
up Hitler's
knowledgeable.
brain, stick it in you, and see how racist you get.
Let's just see what happens. Just a
Just give it
little
a go.
experiment.
Just
That'd be a laugh, wouldn't it?
well, it's not like he could do anything. You can't. You wouldn't be able to like rise up New Zealand against, because every time you tried, you just fall over and
Worth it's worth a try. Yeah.
Well, what if we got you a brain that wasn't that of a monster?
Like who?
I don't know who's dead. Prince. What about the Queen's husband? The Queen.
Yeah, let's go for that.
Let's go for that. That'd be very ladylike.
And and it would suit me. I think I'd make a good queen.
Can you imagine? I'm going to have a seizure now.
No, one is going to have a seizure.
One is going to seize. Pardon. And then
Pardon your
and then that would
majesty.
be it, because she would just if the queen's body tried to have a seizure, the queen's brain would be like, no, that's incorrect,
It's not very proper.
not proper.
It's not what we do in the palace.
It's because it's basically your nervous system just shouting. So,
Yes, yeah.
which is improper in a palatial setting
A proper English lady would not shout in public.
or private.
Yeah, and I've had public and private this last week.
Oh, how's that?
It is-
How's that gone?
Yeah, right. So the last 5 days, 3 seizures, and like I say, each lasting for a decent amount of time. The week started with me having a very bad shoulder and having to have an ultrasound because I'd had a seizure
Oh, yeah, you
and
said that.
fallen, hurt my shoulder. And what they think happened is when I fell, I dislocated it. When the paramedics got here, they moved me by pulling on my arm to sit me up and relocated it. And it's torn a tendon across the top of my shoulder, which begins with S, and I cannot remember its name.
I'm gonna call it Shrek.
Yeah, my Shrek muscle tendon. So it started bad. And then on Tuesday, had a seizure at home. It was exhausting, but there was no drugs, paramedics, kind of fine, one of my standard normal wear me out things. So Wednesday, as we do, wanted to get straight back into normal life. Like, I can do this, I can push through, I can do everything. And so I went in the evening for a jog on the beach. And I hate cardio. And my body and brain agreed that it was a bad idea. And so all I know is that I was running on the beach and then I woke up in hospital.
You fucking what if the tide had come in, you dingus?
Yeah, I have been found near the waterline a couple of times.
You're like a piece of driftwood that can drown.
An active piece of driftwood.
An active piece of
But I mean, I'm not supposed to do things like go swimming on my own.
yeah,
And
because you could die.
yeah, well, I generally abide by that, but every now and again, and you know what it's like, you just go like,
Yeah,
fuck
no, I
the
know.
world. I'll just do what I
Yeah,
want.
no, fuck. Yeah, it's very. I definitely vibe with that. Yeah, just like that. Fuck you, God. I'm gonna do what I think is the right thing to do, and your body's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
but me.
It's like every now and again, you just have to be like, sod it, I'll do what I want. And
Yeah.
I mean, like generally, like if I go to the beach, the back part of the beach is obviously more private, so I don't often go there. I generally stick down the other end that's near the road, and so I'm visible. And like if I'm walking like just in town, I tend not to use sort of side streets, especially if it's sort of nighttime or whatever, because I have to be visible
Mindful.
and
It
easy to
is, I
find.
think that's something I think that that idea that you always have to be mindful and thinking about what you're doing, you
Yeah,
know? And
yeah,
that one of the biggest breaks I see between people who suffer and or people who I don't our type bridge trolls
mm,
and normies is that they some people who follow a spiritual path or whatever willfully enter into trying to do mindfulness, but they have never had their faces rubbed against a fucking sandpaper so hard that there's no option but to do like be
yes,
mindful and mitigate your circumstances.
yeah, and it does almost become second nature.
Mm,
Like I go to the beach and I automatically know I have to be down that end. It is a constant. Like if I have to change a light bulb, I have to be aware I'm going to be standing on a high thing, and not just normal like, oh yeah, be careful on a step ladder or whatever.
mm,
It's like, okay, let's just do a systems check. How is my body? Am I feeling able to do this?
mm.
And being hugely self-aware of what's happening. But it doesn't stop all injuries, and it doesn't, it doesn't protect you all the time. But it's putting those kind of safeguards in place.
Mm.
But yeah. So this
Because you
beach
might
one,
die. But
pardon
anyway,
me.
on the beach. On the
Yeah,
beach.
yeah. So I woke up in hospital with sand and in a gown, which is horrible because
Oh,
you've
fuck
been
hell.
drugged and somebody's taking your clothes off, and that's so weird. You wake up and it's like, okay, I've been manhandled, like like a dead person, because that's pretty much what your body's like when you've been drugged. And so I woke up and I was so pissed off because having that seizure and the one the day before, my reserves and protective instincts were at their lowest.
Mm,
So I kind of woke up and was in tears immediately, like, fuck this, fuck the world,
mm,
over it. And so, kind of on my own, they just leave me to it because I know that I'll just wake up
mm.
and put my trainers on, took the IV line out and set up. And one of the nurses, he came in and he went, "Oh, so you're awake?" And I said, "Yep." And he went, "Okay, bye." And that sort of dismissive, I don't expect, like anything, but a bit of
Mm.
a, I don't know, a smile or a laugh and a joke. And most of them are really good. And I don't know why this individual, maybe it was just a day, yeah, but I don't know. So when I
Maybe
was
it's
like,
not
right, okay, yeah. So I walked out of ED and I was in tears, like visibly in tears. Um, you have to be let out the door because it's locked because it's late at night. And had to find a nurse, and she came over and opened the door and literally said not one word to me, just opened the door and let me out into the waiting room. And it just adds on to that, okay, everyone's pissed off with me because like I say, my protectiveness
Yeah.
was really, really low. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna, it was about 10:30 at night, I think. And I was like, right, fuck this, I'm just gonna walk home. And I was in my running gear and it was really cold because obviously it's night and it's winter. And so trying to be all like, I'm tough, I can do this, kind of marched out the hospital, oh, I'm going to
Mm,
walk home. And it normally takes about an hour to walk home, which is fine. Um, and so I got to, it's probably about 10 minutes down the road. And I was like, okay, this is stupid. I'm freezing and I feel like shit. Now, I'd had the really, I don't know, say good experience that when I was on the beach, the public gathered around and looked after me and saved me and got me to hospital. Brilliant. So I go into the petrol station and I said, hey, is there any chance that you could call me a taxi? And let me just, I put a note of what I did.
You shat on
So,
the floor.
yeah, I walked in
It's
and
just took it.
I
In
said,
the middle of the shop.
yeah, I said, could you do me a favor and call me a taxi? And she said, we don't have a public phone. So I said, no, that's cool. Could you call one on my behalf?
Mm,
And she said, I'm not going to give you my phone. I said, no, could you use the phone here to call one? And she said, we're not allowed to make personal calls. And at this point, I had my arm in a sling from where I dislocated my shoulder. I had running gear on. It was nighttime
mm,
and I was visibly crying. And so I said, look, I've just got out of hospital. I've got to walk for an hour and I just need a taxi. And she said, why don't you use your phone? And I just threw my arms up, like I'm in training gear, and I went, I don't have a phone. And she just stood there. And I was like, okay. So I just walked out and I walked home. And I thought that contrast between having the general public be amazing and then a member of the general public be an absolute fucking idiot. Like, I don't expect this special care, but the part of me does.
You expect a modicum of compassion.
Yes. Yeah.
Because
Like, my
because
instinct would be if somebody said, excuse me, I need some help. You go, okay, what can I do to help within my means?
because we know that need. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's like, when rich people get rich and then they stop caring about the poor is because they've got theirs.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
poor people know what it's like to suffer, so they help each other as much as they can. Like when I do birthday parties, if it's a lower socioeconomic spectrum family that have got me in, I always get offered cake. If I go to a rich person's birthday party, I never get offered cake.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And
It's that phrase that I can't quite recall, but it's like when rich people are like, "Oh, money isn't everything," and it's like, yeah, because you don't have to think about it.
And they did a thing about like money doesn't buy you happiness, but it does, and until about 70, until your basic needs are met, and 75 grand a year or whatever, until you're like not stressed by it, then it's
Yes.
diminishing returns.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, all of their problems, all the things that make them sad, would be solved with money.
They
Being
find
able
something
to
else to be sad
afford
about,
life. Yeah,
but
money
they'd have
is,
less stress and they'd have less suffering because of that, for sure.
yeah. I mean, but even like for us, we've got our constant suffering that we have. And money would help with that.
Yeah.
Because we wouldn't have to have normal life stresses. It would take a lot of that away.
If I just didn't have to earn and all I had to do is take care of my house and take care of myself, that would be nice.
Yeah, it would just be a lot less stress and possibly even, sort of treatments and options
Yeah, the more
could be
exotic
opened
stuff.
up.
Yeah, I mean I definitely, because we moved into the house bus because of that, because I couldn't really earn. So I was like, okay, we need to reduce our outgoings to what we can make work.
Yeah.
And because we're in the house bus and our rent is so low, it meant that everything else was still relatively normal. Like, we don't splurge and go out, but we could every once in a while go to the movies,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the stuff that makes life feel like you're living life and not just subsisting and eating out of tin cans.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I could afford to live in an inflatable house with soft edges
Oh my
and
God.
bouncy floors.
Can you imagine if you lived in a bouncy, you need to get sponsored by a bouncy house maker company and live the rest of your existence in a bouncy castle.
Yeah.
You know what
See,
they call it bounce houses in the States, which is dumb.
well, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cute. I'd
Yeah.
probably get more visitors because everyone would want to come and play at Nay's house. It would make things so much more fun. See, the closest I've come to that is one Christmas, my mum sent me a gift in the post, and it was a full bubble wrap suit, and she wrote on the front "Spaz Protection Suit," and I love that. On that, I woke up Christmas morning and opened that and thought, this is brilliant. Got out of bed, thought I'll put it on and I'll take a picture and I'll send it to mum. So I put it on, stood up, and then went, I was sleeping naked and this suit is see-through. It's probably not a good picture to put on Facebook. Caught that one just in time. That's a whole nother level of kink.
There's someone who's going to pay money for that thing.
Yeah. It's like, if the sex is bad, at least you can pop bubbles. Everyone's a winner.
The sex is bad if you're popping bubbles during it.
And I must admit, it wasn't a peephole bodysuit.
It would be kind of like, when you like press yourself against the glass in a shower. It'd be
Yeah,
like
I know
that,
what you mean. Yeah, yeah.
but bumpy. I can't imagine.
See, if I couldn't see your face, I'd say you were liking this, but your face is saying very differently.
No, sorry, Bob.
Steve don't like.
Check, please. I think it's
Um,
just the way it would make your skin all smeary.
Fun. Anyway, so
Anyway,
that was a really bad hospital seizure thing, and so I got home, was absolutely destroyed. And then the next day, I had that was the next day, 2 days later, another seizure. And so my week has been completely controlled by being a spaz. And the last one, I have a diary that I can show you there. It's my seizure journal that I put obviously normal life in there, but I put every time I have a seizure. Well, most times I have a seizure, the ones that are either public or that St. John's have turned up for. I don't put every single one because it would be full of it. And I highlight them in yellow.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And so I highlight them in yellow. So when St. John's turn up, they can have a look in my diary and go, this is when we last turned up, she had drugs or whatever. And so normally it's things like seizure at home, no drugs, seizure on the beach, drugs. The one on the last one I had, I've just put fucking seizure, for fuck's sake. That's what's highlighted this one. And normally when like the paramedics get here, once I start to be coherent, I'll be like, oh yeah, everything's fine, like hey, and just pasting normal on, and I wait until they leave. I'm like, thanks very much, great. And then I sit on the sofa and feel like shit, will often be in tears, and I'm just so exhausted that my eyes are burning in my head, and I beat myself up for a while. And so on this one, all of that went out the window. I just sat here, like when they were here, and they were being lovely and they were being nice, and I couldn't even interact like normal and be polite or nice.
I'm just so drained that
I'm just yeah, I've got nothing left to, I don't know, appease or make things easier for them. I don't care if they walk out thinking I'm a miserable bitch. I'm done. And what happens with me is because I feel like I've had these 3 interactions with St. John. I've had that physical side, I've had the mental side, is the alarm that I wear. I don't want to wear it now because I can't handle another visible thing. Like if they turn up, it's like I have to admit, yes, I'm having another one. Whereas I can take the alarm off, nobody's going to know if I have one. Yes, I might die. But at the moment, this is how miserable it feels when it's been a constant, is, yeah, that's fine.
How often do you have them this frequently?
It kind of goes in fits and starts.
Hey!
So I can have like, I don't know, a few weeks where I'm having one on average a week. And then I can have a run of them where I can have 2 in a day, for 3 days. And so, yeah, this has just been a particularly bad week. I mean, like, so I'll show you.
You're like cluster, like you
see
get
those-
cluster migraines.
Those
You have
3
cluster
highlighted bits you
seizures.
can see.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
this
yeah.
last week. So that's 3 this last week. The one before was just the one where I hurt my shoulder. The one before, the one before that I had concussion. That was fun. So yeah.
So once a week would be the minimum?
I'd say 1 or 2 a week.
1 or 2 a week
is kind of standard.
but 3, especially in like such short with no breaks in between, is pretty. Was that unusual?
Yeah, it doesn't happen too often.
High.
Yeah. So it kind of hits hard, and going into that week with the fucked shoulder as well.
And the concussion.
It's like, and sort of falling onto that. And obviously when you're out of it, people are moving you around and they're not necessarily aware of how bad you're hurting already. And so, and it exacerbates that. And like I say, before I hurt my shoulder, I had a concussion. That was fun. I don't remember a lot about that. And I think that was like my 6th concussion this year, which...
You're a rugby player.
I know, right? I'm totally punch drunk. It's like there's, and one of the guys, one of the St. John guys was telling me a while ago about, and I don't understand a lot about the mechanics of it, but he was doing a particular study, like one of his papers on concussion and
Mm.
the cumulative effects.
Mm.
And so it's not just like, oh, I'm concussed and now I'm better. Oh, another concussion, now I'm better. It's at one point I might have a concussion that really fucks me up.
Mm.
I mean,
Like a
I'm a
concussion.
spaz now,
Yeah.
but like, how bad could this get? It's been a bad year for head knocks.
The like the thing that it's like, you know, because you're such an extreme case, you know, like the 5 minutes is a long seizure.
Mm.
Like the concussion is a traumatic brain injury.
Yes, yeah,
It is a significant neurological event in a brain that's full of neurological events already.
yeah,
Like you might end
yeah.
up like one of those people. You might need a whiteboard.
I might be one of them, like even more of a spaz than I am
I
already.
I use the refrigerator. I just write down stuff that I need to remember. Like if I'm at a loose end, I'm like, okay, no, that's the task I'm working on. Or if there's like a bill that needs paid or shit, like I'll put it
Yes.
up there.
I'm a huge believer in lists. Like I have a notebook beside me all the time. And my list, it can be really simple things,
Mm.
you know, like put the hoodie in the bedroom or something, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
or even on really bad days, my list will be have a shower
yeah, 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 yeah.
and put it on the list because you might only have four things to do in a day, but when they're just in your brain and you're trying to remember all four, it seems like loads. So you put them on a
Mm.
list and you get a bit of brain space. And then every time you cross something off the list, it feels good. And
And it
sometimes I'll trick myself and I'll put something on the list that I've already done
that's
so I
really
can
clever.
cross it out. So you can go, yay, progress.
You get that dopamine hit from doing the thing.
Yes, yeah. So
The
these little tricks. But I mean, with the concussions, luckily I've got a skull like a caveman that's probably an inch thick. So I
cool.
can, yeah, yeah. So I mean, I've had some serious lumps on my head, like, you know, huge eggs,
Yeah.
and I've recovered from them really quickly
Mm.
because I think my body is so used to injuries that all my little inside body soldiers, they go running off to the injury to fix it.
Okay, this is pure medical speculation because you,
Science.
yes, that's exactly because your nervous system is so hyper activated, and because your heart rate gets up to 210, and because you know all your muscles fire, you know, for that length of time,
Mm.
you're basically a transhuman, and you're that's why everything goes faster because you're not really a person anymore.
So I'm more highly developed.
Sure, let's go with
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
maybe my human body isn't capable of containing all of that amazing superior humanness, and
Okay.
that's why the seizures hit me. It's like we
Think
can't
of it.
deal with the awesome.
Think of it more like it's like a hot rod. Yeah, you know, you put in a really fast turbo, but then the pistons are gonna, you know, have trouble
Yeah,
keeping up.
yeah. It's
So
like
yeah,
putting a Ferrari engine in your house bus, that kind
yeah,
of business. Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly, exactly. It would just rattle itself to pieces, which you do.
yeah, pretty much. It's funny. Well, it's not funny. What you're saying about the, you know, concussions being a um TBI, the traumatic brain injury, is that my seizures that I have two types of, and the epileptic ones, which are controlled pretty much by the drugs, they break through now and again. But the others are the functional neurological disorder, which basically means seizures that aren't necessarily connected to something really clear. And mine are from having the bends
Mm.
um, years and years ago, and took a while to get neurologists to understand that. And that's a
Mm.
whole other story.
Right.
But having the bends is a traumatic brain injury. Mine was cerebral and neurological,
Right.
and so yeah, it's traumatic brain injury. And then over the years, the more seizures, the more head knocks, the more concussions. It's like my brain is repeatedly getting punched.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of not a surprise that they get worse and
Yeah, 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 yeah.
that they're
Because it's the
pretty.
it's well, that's the cycle, because it like
Mhm.
it's kind of the same with the upwind. You know, your nervous system learns through repetition and through consistency. And if your nervous system is now at a point, I mean, how long have you been seizing?
Oh, about 17 years.
17 years.
17 years, yeah. 16
17
years.
years, and your body has been going, oh, this is what normal is. This is
Yes.
how I should act. So it
Yeah,
just
yeah.
gets better and better at having seizures, or basically being a hot rod for awesomeness.
Yeah, yeah. And it's something that you can't train yourself out of that. I mean,
Mm.
they tried to, every now and again they'll send me to a psychologist to see if they can psych the seizures out of me. And
Boom.
every time I've gone in fully like, okay, let's try this. Let's see if we can reprogram me
Mm.
to not have seizures. And every time they've sent me, the psychologist has said, you're fine
Mm.
psychologically, uh, because my coping mechanisms are better than most people's
Mm.
because I've had to,
Exactly.
and
That's
so
what I was talking about with the mindfulness stuff. Is like you
yeah,
go and you
yeah,
see the doctors, and you're like, no, like if I didn't have my shit together in a box, I would be literally on the floor.
yeah, yeah, that's it. It's like I'm very, and like I said, they give you all these, tips and the toolbox full of things to try and
Mm.
help. And I've fully embraced that. Like,
Mm.
please, if you told me to go into the middle of town on a Saturday, strip naked and dance, you know, and that
In a
would stop
bubble
my
suit.
seizures, I'd give it a go. I've tried everything. So whenever they send me to the psych, I go, okay, let's do all this. And they eventually go, can we discharge you because your brain is fine from a
Your
mental
mind is
health?
fine, but your body is fucked.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like when they say that my mental health isn't contributing to the seizures, it's
Mm.
like, they don't know how fucked my mental health is. I'm screwed.
I was lying the whole time.
But it is quite nice actually going to a psychologist after a seizure, or when you're in the, sort of the mental
In the
down
pits, yeah,
from
yeah,
seizures,
the
because
pit
then
part.
they, yeah, and because then they can see what you're like when you're dealing with it, and that's when they see actually you do all the tricks, you do your best
Mm.
to use the tricks and get out of it. Because I don't. Sometimes people do have psychological seizures. There's various different names for it, but it's I don't know, not so much like a panic attack, but it's like an escape.
Mm.
Like when their brain can't handle a situation, or when there's an overload, then a seizure can happen. And it's still a genuine seizure for people who
Yeah, yeah.
suffer. It's still a genuine seizure, but can be assisted in a lot of
You
cases.
can mitigate the circumstances that'll
Yeah,
trick.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, I tried all their things,
Mm.
and they said no.
Yeah. I think
I've
what
tried.
what I think is interesting about that whole piece was like, as people who have these monumental struggles, we know that having a down period is part of the cycle.
Hmm.
And that, you will have this bit where you're down, you're struggling, and then you'll go up for a little while, and then at some point you'll probably go down again. And how to get through that, one foot in front of the other,
Yes,
which a
yeah,
lot of people with depression and stuff, that's the hardest part. It's just like doing the walking. Whereas
yeah,
I think
yeah,
because we've had to limp for so long, that it's like you can be really in a bad place psychologically, feeling very down and on yourself, and you're like, okay, and just looking at your watch, waiting for this particular period of ick to be over.
yeah, yeah. And see,
And
that's one of the things with them, with the psychological side, is they there's standard sort of things that this is going to work for a lot of people. And so when I go like, okay, I'm feeling crap because I've had a seizure, they want to, it kind of, how do you explain it? They feel that you're avoiding, if you don't let yourself feel sad, if you
mm,
try and bounce back really quickly, that you're still avoiding the psychological issues that
mm,
could be contributing to the seizures. But then when I've gone in to see them after a seizure, and they see that I'm not embracing the downside,
yeah,
but I look at it head on. I
yeah,
don't
yeah, yeah.
look away, and I'll outwardly I'll show the world, yeah, I'm fine, everything's good. But that's just a public face, you
Yeah,
know. I'm fully
everyone's
aware.
got that.
Yeah,
That.
yeah, yeah. But it's like I don't pretend to myself like I can sit in the
Mm,
lounge and go, yeah, no, I feel absolute dog shit. And you know, psychologically and emotionally, like at the moment, I know that I'm struggling.
mm,
And there's a lot of things that are coming to the surface. Like my dad who died recently. It's like, yeah, I haven't kind of processed that properly. And
mm,
so that's that's coming to the forefront at the moment, which isn't helping.
mm,
Um, but because of all this practice over the years, I'm not looking away from all of that.
mm.
It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I'm not
You're
I'm
like,
not
oh yeah, no,
avoiding.
this when you know how to surf, you can see when the waves are big or if it's a small wave, and you can look and say, this is gonna be a shitter of a one. You know,
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
about to get dumped off the surfboard and
Yeah,
eat
yeah.
shit and maybe drown a little bit, splutter,
Yeah, yeah.
breathe in a little bit of water. I'll end up on the beach eventually. You know,
Yeah. Now, see, to somebody who that's their first surfing experience,
mm,
their panic is going to be, yeah, everyone's going to panic, but
yeah,
they don't know what the fuck's on the other side, and it's scary.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Whereas having years and years of practice of surfing, you've got those skills of like, okay, if I kick for the surface, okay, as soon as I get into shore, this is what I've got to do, this is what I've got to be aware of.
Mm,
Then you can mitigate the danger a little, and you know that there is skills and techniques
mm.
that you will survive it.
I
And so
remember like
that's
so
where I am at the minute is, okay, let's use all these skills
do the
and I'll
thing.
get back on the beach.
The one that my first touchstone when I got back from my trip, and I was really like the first day back, I was like, oh boy, I've done something stupid. And
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, self-care. Let's go get in the shower and do the dishes and brush your teeth, then sit down and watch some telly, then maybe tidy a bit. Just like that really, you know,
Yeah.
it's what I learned a lot of it from being a support worker of like what basic functioning looks like
Yeah. Yeah.
and what not doing self-abuse, you know, where you're completely ignoring what's going on physically and emotionally, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And it's that taking stock of your entire inventory, like you're saying, you have to stop and say, okay, I've had all these seizures, but also there's something else going on, and you have to
Yes.
have all your like this really wide understanding of who you are and how you function that most people just don't have the
Yeah. Yeah.
opportunity or
And it's,
that aren't. Yeah.
yeah, and it's that prioritizing of what is going to help right now.
Mm,
It's like I know that having a super tidy house and having been to the gym and done, achieved things, that makes me feel good.
mm.
But right now, it's like, okay, I'm not going to vacuum because that's not life altering.
Yeah, yeah,
I do need to make sure I shower. I do need to make sure I drink water. You
mm.
know, those things are higher up my priorities than vacuuming right now.
And I
And
think
so
those are,
some things can slide as long as I can keep on top of the basics,
yeah, they're not
and then
dying
eventually I'll catch up and do the other stuff.
because the thing is like our bodies do still heal, you know.
Yes.
And if you can learn, and I mean that was one of the biggest hard lessons was unprogramming that constant doing, and like I've got to be working it like it's modern Western life is so
Mhm.
relentless.
And you do then guilt yourself, put pressure on ourselves to keep up with how everyone else does it. I
Mm,
say everyone else flippantly, but yeah, how you're expected to live life. And even though we've had years of practice, it's hard not to try and do that. And I know it's our worst enemy. It's
mm,
like we would both benefit from the chance to just sit and do nothing, switch our brains off,
mm.
and not have to think about it. Like my body would enjoy that break, but my brain wouldn't. Like if I said, okay, I'm going to have a week off the gym, yeah, my body would probably like that, but my mental health would suffer.
But that's where it's like that the surfing where I say, okay, I can't do a week without, but I need to give my body 2 days space, or
Yeah, yeah.
I need to give myself like how much slack are you gonna give yourself? Because it is that constant back and forth. Like I feel better when I've done the things I want to do or the things that I know I need to do to get success in the areas that I'm trying to get them. And just finding ways to fit that in is the job of being a spaz.
It is a full-time job.
Mm.
So when people sort of ask, what do you do for a living? It's like, I try and stay alive. That's my full-time job. Thanks.
Not
Doesn't
very
pay
good at
too
anything
well.
else.
And it doesn't, go down well at dinner parties that I obviously go to hundreds of with the ambassador. So, but I am the Queen of England,
You
don't
are the
forget,
queen,
you
darling.
know.
You are the queen. Brava. And I think we shall have to bid adieu. It is time for the ending of the podcast.
The ending of the podcast. Yeah, for
I
today.
think
Anyway.
for today. For today. We're going to keep them going. Thank you guys so much for listening. As always, if you are struggling out there, we hope that, the listening to other people struggle has helped. If you've got any your own spaz problems, hit us up on the social medias,
Yeah.
which
Good.
exist.
Share your misery. Makes
Share
us
your
feel better
misery.
to hear about your
Yeah,
shit
at least I'm
life.
not that poor bitch. Jesus Christ. See you guys soon.
Awesome.